name is Elka, and today I'll be talking to you about the medical advancements since before the World Wars of 1912 until present day. I've asked my friends to come better explain the concepts that I've collected. Here's one right now. Nah, I'm just kidding. Yael, how about you?
Hi, I'm Yael, and I think I could do a better job than our friend here, Bob. But there has been so many medical advances since the First World War, so what would you like me to talk about?
Well, we can start at the beginning of the war and we'll take it from there.
Okay, sounds good. So, let's start from the beginning. World War I began June 28, 1914, and like my friend Elka said, there are many developments that happened throughout the war, but what conditions did the medical field actually start in? And I can answer that. There was about 1,000 people on the medical field staff in the Army, and there was not a lot of medical technology that they could use. So those things put together equaled a lot of dead soldiers, unfortunately. And so if a soldier would get shot in the head, they didn't have a good chance of surviving. If a soldier got shot in the torso area, which is this area over here, they also didn't have a good chance of surviving. But there was a 12% chance that actually made it to the hospital. 12% of the soldiers made it to the hospital, which is pretty good. And there was also many leg injuries that the soldiers had. They would get shot in the leg and they would survive, but usually without a leg, because they would survive the surgery, but the wound would get infected. So they had to usually get it amputated, unfortunately. So what would happen if the soldiers had any of these injuries? Would they kind of just like wait around hoping that they would get saved? No. There was a process to the treatment. So these are the 6 steps to the process of treatment. The first step was you would be carried by a nurse or a volunteer at the time on a stretcher to a regimental aid post. And here they would examine you and see how bad your situation was. If your situation happened to be very severe, you would be taken by a motor ambulance to the 4th step, which was a casualty clearing station. In the station, they observed you and saw and looked at you, and if you didn't die there, then and your situation was really bad, then you would be transported by a hospital train to a hospital base. And if you made it this far, then you were really meant to live, because here you got real help from real doctors, and the path was unfortunately very long, and it caused a lot of soldiers to die, unfortunately. Once you would get to the hospital base, then you could get help from real doctors who had experience, and here it was just the beginning, really, of a soldier's treatment. So during the war, countries were using new weapons to help win the war, but these new weapons had a major impact on the human body, and so doctors and especially surgeons had a really tough time curing people. The reasoning for this is a person could undergo a major surgery, but the tough part wasn't the surgery. The tough part was surviving after the surgery. Many wounds or incisions would get infected, and at the time there wasn't yet any concepts of antibiotics, so if a person got an infection, it would not be a good sign. However, there were surgeons and doctors who were eager to help cure people and save them from this misery. So these 2 doctors, the first, Leonard Joyce, and the second, Robert Donaldson, even though they did not claim credit for it publicly, came up with the idea of antibiotics, which was really good for the time that they were in. They were receiving patients, and unfortunately some of them died. These were soldiers. But luckily, some of them survived. From the few that survived, they realized that their wounds had a special smell. And so Leonard Joyce got thinking, and he decided to grow cultures from these smelly wounds. And luckily, he realized that the cultures he grew were natural healing bacteria. And so they first decided to try it on animals, and luckily the experiment worked on animals and it did not harm the animals. And so they tried it on humans, and luckily the humans actually survived, and they were getting better like the other people, which was good because it saved many soldiers' lives in the future. And this experiment was done at the Berkshire Hospital. And they called this bacteria the writing bacillus. And this idea of using bacteria to help heal wounds was expanded further between World War I and World War II because Fleming discovered penicillin. And penicillin is an antibacterial that was used during the Second World War to help contain infection. And since penicillin was used after surgery, they discovered that using silk thread to tie up loose ends of an artery helped contain the risk of infection and therefore saving lots of soldiers' lives.
During the early 19th century, PTSD was first known as shell shock. They gave it this name in reference to exposure of artillery shells. There were many treatments for shell shock, so soldiers often received only a few days' rest before returning to the war zone. For those with severe or chronic symptoms, treatments focused on daily activity to increase functioning in hopes of returning them to productive civilian lives. Soldiers often have this disorder from the experience, like bombs, seeing someone being blown up, or serious incidents. It comes from being shocked or traumatized from what they've seen. Later on during World War II, shell shock diagnosis was replaced by combat stress reaction, also known as battle fatigue. Combat stress reaction was treated using PIE, proximity, immediacy, and expectancy principles. PIE requires treating casualties without delay and making sure sufferers expected complete recovery so that they could return to combat after rest. PTSD is a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmare, and severe anxiety, as well as uncontrollable thoughts about the event. If not treated, it could get worse over time. Today, the chances of having PTSD is not as likely for a citizen, but more for a soldier in the Army. However, we can experience it on a smaller scale, like being in a house on fire or seeing someone get shot. Today, there are many clinics that offer therapy and medication to their patients and may prescribe anti-anxiety or antidepressant medication. Today, we better understand this disease and its effects so we know how to cure it, unlike the beginning of the 19th century. Today, PTSD patients are treated with medicine and therapy.
So now that my partner Elka and I have gone over some of the major medical discoveries that were developed in the First World War, we can speak about how they still have an effect on us today. The first thing, antibiotics. The concept of antibiotics was developed during the First World War, but over time it has grown and is now used not only to cure severe wounds, but also to help cure a simple throat infection or ear infection. The second thing, PTSD. PTSD started in the First World War and is now used to help contain the fear and trauma of the battlefield conditions. So throughout history, beginning with World War I, there were many injuries and diseases that were being discovered because of the battlefield conditions. And so doctors had to come up with new ways and strategies to improve the treatment process. And since then, many doctors have constantly been discovering treatments like antibiotics and other different types of medical cures.
So thanks for watching this crash course on medicine and its advancements throughout history. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.